just like a friend. I tried to warn you somehow.
We're going to call this meeting to order. If you don't mind, everybody can please take a seat and let's get started. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is a really wonderful turnout. I'm so glad that there are so many people concerned about our parks and are ready to weigh in this evening. First of all, let's bring it up here and let's get everybody to, let's do a roll call. Who's here tonight?
Cindy Powers.
Sila Saleska.
Doreen Gunnar.
Joe Burns.
As all Park and Recreation Committee meetings, Commission meetings, we always start off with an opportunity from anybody in the audience who has something to talk about that is not on tonight's agenda, that is not regarding the Dunphy Park schematic plan. If there's anybody who needs to come forward at this time to speak on something else, please do so now. All right, I see that we're all here for Dunphy. That's good. At this moment, I must let you all know that as the most immediate neighbor, I live at Galley Harbor, which borders Dunphy Park. And I also am the harbor manager there, and I must recuse myself regarding this matter. So I am going to step down from this podium at this time, and I'm going to join you in the audience. Thank you.
That leaves it to me. Woo! I'm Joe Burns. I'm the vice chair, and I'll be taking the meeting from here. We're going to do one piece of business for us, which is talk about a task force that we brought up in a previous meeting, and it would be best if we finalize that at this point, just a couple seconds, so we know going forward who's going to be engaging more with the community in this process. So we need to choose a two-person task force based on our last meeting. And given that there's three of us,
I nominate you, Joe, and I nominate Sila. I'm saying that I have another commitment. I'm unable to do it.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. See how fascinating public government works? So now we will open it to the Dunphy Park schematic master plan discussion, and I think we'll start first. We'll have a lot of history tonight, and it is wonderful to see so many faces, and I hope at some point in the last month or so you've had a chance to look at the plan and get familiar with it. We're going to have a lot of definition from our facilitator Pam, as well as Mike and Jonathan on some of the boundaries and the criteria for tonight. But the more we kind of keep to that plan, the better we can really delve into solving this portion, which is a schematic master plan discussion. I'll turn it over now to Mike to talk a little bit about the history, and then we'll get on with the process.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Vice Chair Burns. I do want to, as you said, introduce Pam Jones, who is here to my right. She is a facilitator that we brought in to help us get through this process. Pam was at the November 2013 public forum that was held in at the Bay Model. It was very helpful, very informative, and she kept us on task, and we got a lot of good information out there, and that then the Friends of Dunphy Park took with them. First, I want to, again, reiterate what Commissioner Burns said. It's great to see this many people at a Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. This is a new record for me in my 8 years, so I don't know if that means we're doing something right or doing something wrong, but we'll find out. I hope we're going to get it right tonight, and I think we will. Just to give a little brief history of Dunphy Park. Dunphy Park was acquired by the city in the 80s. It was kind of known as the People's Park, public park, and it was built by a group of volunteers in the 80s. Not much has really been done to it since. There's been minor tweaks. The gazebo was added, little things here and there. The city did acquire the property that is known as the railroad strip that is between the park and between Bridgeway, and the city does own some portion of land on the south side of the park, south side of the slough there. Some may remember the temporary police building that was there for 12, 14 years or something. But now so the city owns that. There's discussion of other property that the city may acquire in the future, but those, as the city does not acquire those, does not have those yet, we can't really we can dream in the back of our heads, but we can't push that out there today and get moving on that other portion. So what we're here today to discuss is the piece of property that the city does own. Now, in 2013, the City Council ranked the need for a schematic master plan for Dunphy Park 5th on the fiscal year 2014 priority calendar. So then on November 16th, 2013, a public forum was held that I talked about at the Bay Model, where the Friends of Dunphy Park gathered information on what the public thinks of the park, what they like about the park, what they don't like about the park, and what they would like to see towards the future. And that's where it was to develop a schematic master plan. Jacques will get you going, give you a better description of a schematic master plan in a moment here. But at that time, we wanted to basically see where would we be going in the future should the funds become available. Well, this past election season, as the voters of City Council, or voters of both City Council as well as the public, voted to have the Measure F pass. So we now have funding available. There's a dedicated $1.8 million towards Dunphy Park. So that just means that the schematic master plan is even more important today than it was before, because we can actually get something done here. So with that, I want to introduce Pam Jones, and she's going to talk about the meeting here, how things are going, and what the process is going to be for the evening.
Was this on? Okay. And the reason we're using the microphones is that it is being recorded. Is it actually being streamed?
It is not being streamed. They had other broadcast issues, but it is being recorded and will be posted at a later date.
Okay. As Mike said, my name is Pam Jones, and I am a neutral facilitator. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have an interest in the park. I don't live here, but I am familiar with it, and I have been following it for the past couple of years. How many of you were at those meetings 2 years ago, 2013? Okay. And how many are relatively new to this park and what's been going on? A few people. Okay. Hopefully it will be basic enough, and particularly with the PowerPoint presentation, that it's not going to leave anyone behind. So what our goal is tonight is to get input and your public comment so that the Parks and Recreation Commission and the city staff can make a decision on whether to move this forward to its next steps. And we can talk about what those next steps are now, or we can talk about what those next steps are at the beginning. Jonathan, did you have any preference on decision process, of talking about that decision process? Okay. So that can be part of your comment or question. If you do have questions in addition to comments, we are going to vary this a little bit. Most public hearings are just you have your 3 minutes, you make your comments, and we try to accommodate everyone. If there are some areas that are still unclear, we are going to take some time out and answer those questions just so that everyone does have a common understanding of where things are. This is not the only opportunity to give input. You can leave written comment tonight. We don't actually have comment forms, but you could take the sheet here and write on it, or in your note cards. You can send an email to the city. You can submit a comment on the website. And then there will be future meetings with Parks and Recreation. Next week there will be one on Wednesday night. And you're welcome to come back for that as well. Eventually this will go to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission may have comments about it. When it comes time to hiring a contractor, if there is work to begin, it has to go to the City Council. City Council needs to approve it as an expenditure. So this is part of the long process of getting public information. or getting your public comment. We're going to have Sarah, my colleague Sarah, taking notes on the flip charts, just so we kind of have a general high-level record of what's going on. And then Alan, my colleague, is going to be taking more detailed notes. And that's what we did last time. We categorized them according to, I think it was 13 categories that you all had identified and had comments on. So those will be available for the city and for the public as well. In terms of our ground rules tonight, I think most of you have probably been to public meetings before. They are largely good manners behavior. That means speaking one at a time, letting the person who has the floor have their time to speak, not, you know, shouting boos or yays from the class. If you're really for something, you might want to snap your fingers. Anyway, that will allow us to continue the talking without a lot of disruption. I do have speaker cards here, and there are some on the table. We're going to do that so that I can call you up, and I am going to have you speak into the microphone there so that we can record it. We're generally aiming for 3 minutes, just so that the last person has the same opportunity as the first person in order to talk. We're scheduled to go until 8:30 tonight. And again, if you want to speak again tonight after everyone's had their comments, we may be able to have people speak a second time. And you have next Wednesday as well. So, any process questions? Okay, let me get your... Any process questions of how the night is? Okay. And I do appreciate your just kind of common consideration for the evening. I think it makes it a lot more conducive to people who sometimes are nervous to speak if they think that they're being listened to, and so I do appreciate that. So before we begin, we have a presentation by Friends of Dunphy Park, Jacques Ullman. It's probably about 10 minutes, and that will give you an overview of where the situation is now with the schematic plan. And just as a reminder, a schematic plan is a plan that looks at placement of items in a park. And while there is a list of specific plants that are being considered to be placed in certain areas, this isn't that time to say, you know, I think the agapanthus should go here. It's general groupings of, you know, where things are, the flow, the parking, etc. So higher level and not so specific. Okay, Jacques, are there any more chairs? This is a success disaster. Not enough chairs. Come on in. Would anyone like to sit up on the dais? You're smart. Okay, and we do, the windows are open. I know it's hot in here, so we're going to try and regulate the temperature. The more people, the more hot it's going to be. So, Jacques, go ahead.
Is this working properly? I think it is. Okay. Okay, so we're presenting a schematic master plan now for, I think, the third time. It was, this is a revised version of what was presented twice before the City Council and once before the Parks and Rec. So we have tried to modify the plan to reflect some changes based on conversations we've had with various interested groups. But at the same time, we've also had to continue to keep in mind the program that was behind this plan, which was based on a public outreach program, which was pretty extensive. So we had to balance some individual needs with the overall plan, and hopefully we've succeeded. I'm sure that we haven't been able to please everyone, but as we go through this, I'll explain what we've done. So those of you who have seen previous presentations, a lot of this will be a repeat. You can see the park is right in the middle of town on the waterfront. And so this is to improve and maintain for public use as a park and a habitat preserve this last remaining portion of undeveloped waterfront. We do have a wonderful waterfront to the south of the central part of town along Bridgeway, but that's a different feeling. It's rock riprap with a fantastic view of the city and the bay. But Dunphy Park represents a completely different situation in the heart of the residential area and with a relatively undeveloped waterfront that offers a lot of opportunities. This gives you an idea of the ownership of property around the park. Galilee to the north. Houlihan is probably no longer the name. That's the former Malia property, and it's been sold recently, and I'm not sure exactly the official name, but and then there's Bridgeway Marine, which is an important owner to the south, and other owners in the neighborhood. The Schematic Master Plan is a guideline to assure that future incremental improvement plans are compatible with the city's long-range view for park development. As was explained earlier, this park was built by some volunteers in the 80s, and not much was done since then, but it's clear that something needs to be done, and we realize this, and so we wanted to make sure that anything that was done would be done as part of a vision for the future and compatible with it. We did not know at the beginning that we would have the funds that we have now, and now we have actually an even better opportunity than we thought we had. Desired improvements, activities, and priorities will be defined along with preferred locations, technical requirements, and governmental limitations. The program for the Dunphy Park Schematic Master Plan is based on public input from an outreach program that included a city website, survey, a questionnaire, and a professionally facilitated public forum. Now, we actually made a presentation of a summary of the public comments from these three sources to the City Council at a public hearing. It was actually quite difficult to do this because the sources were three very different ones, but they were based on, I think it was about 14 different topics, and so we were able to compile a consensus, and that formed the basis for how we went about developing the plan. So this is the plan, the revised plan as it looks now. I will take you through different portions of the plan. This just gives you an overview of it. The input from public outreach clearly indicated that the plan would have to respond to a very broad spectrum of activities ranging from bocce ball tournaments to quiet habitat for wildlife. So that was quite a challenge. The plan includes 6 zones that blend with minimum conflict: parking, toilets, and activities. Active uses are placed together at the north end, multi-use in the grass bowl in the middle, and passive habitat rehab and preservation to the south. So you can see here we have the parking, and then we have the multi-use and the passive. So the multi-use becomes the sort of in-between that the others spill into. And we'll have a discussion on every one of these parts. And then we have the beach, and then the various activities out in the water. So we'll start with the parking. And one thing I'd like to comment is that if you look at the parking now at Dunphy Park, it's a helter-skelter parking. It's not really an official parking lot. And there's been parking along the railroad right-of-way, and all of that has been helter-skelter. And one of the things that you find when you're actually designing a parking lot, and and doing it in a formalized way is that when you have to meet all of the requirements that code requires for the size of the spaces and the size of the backup drive in between the spaces, that takes up a lot more space than helter-skelter. And so it's kind of a temptation to look at an existing situation and then be a little bit dismayed at maybe how there may be fewer cars in a given area, but we have to meet a lot of different requirements. One of them will be BCDC's requirements, not only in how close you are to the waterfront, but also the drainage, the grading, the infiltration of pollutants into the bay, and so on, so that it's a very serious issue, parking, and it's not an easy thing to solve. So actually, I'd like to just go back here to point out that you see the parking that we've developed here in an L shape. And actually, along Bridgeway, we're showing just a little less than half of the railroad right-of-way along Ridgeway with parking. So we're not eliminating the parking on the right-of-way. We still have almost half of the right-of-way with parking. And furthermore, it's double-loaded parking, which requires several more feet than the railroad right-of-way. We actually have had to intrude on the existing park area beyond the railroad right-of-way, but it's a much, much more efficient way of putting parking there. So I think that has to be appreciated. So if you look at it more carefully, you'll see there's 70 parking spaces, including 2 ADA van and 3 ADA auto spaces, and they've been distributed in different parts of the parking area because the parking area is servicing different functions. Parking at the north end of park with toilets and active uses such as bocce and volleyball near the parking. No parking along the waterfront, and minimum parking on railroad right-of-way, and no toilets at pedestrian entrances. So I will demonstrate later on that eliminating as much of the parking along the railroad right-of-way is a key essential to the core of this plan, and an essential part of the requirements from the forum, and also the railroad right-of-way was part of a purchase that was made with funds that came from the Coastal Conservancy. And one of the restrictions was that one of the reasons that they funded it was to give the public better access to the bay. So therefore, we did have to take that into consideration. And in fact, the public forum input showed that the public agreed and understood that. I'm not saying everyone in the public, but we had to come up with a consensus. So we moved from the parking to the active facilities. Now, one of the things that we did between the city council hearing, the last city council hearing and this one, is we contacted 3 of the major stakeholders in the immediate area, Galilee, the Bocce Association, and the Cruising Club. And so the Bocce organization met and determined that they really had to have 3 courts, not 2. They also expressed a strong desire to be as near the water as possible, which is what they've been accustomed to in their current location. They also wanted to have as many picnic tables and benches as possible. So we accommodated that. We had to sacrifice, to some extent, the berming aspects of the grass bowl and the sort of amphitheater effect that we were trying to create for the bocce court. But we found a reasonable compromise, and So we feel that this has been pretty successful. We flipped the volleyball courts and the bocce so that the bocce would be closer to the water as they desired. Picnic tables we show here, but this is really something that will be in the details to come. There's enough room for plenty of picnic tables. We don't know their exact design, and their location will have to be. Things like that, of course, are for the future. But the grading creates shaded sloped lawn areas for spectator viewing. There's a visually connected to the gazebo and multi-use area. The active areas, although they have their own space, they're connected to the rest of the park. That's one of the essential things about this park, is it is meeting so many different needs, and we want them to blend with each other. So there's not a clear definition between one area and another, and yet there is enough to make each one work separately. The bocce is located near the water, similar to the existing. The picnic tables and benches are distributed throughout. Night lighting, we're recommending be designed so that it does not disturb the neighborhood. There's a kind of lighting that could possibly be put underneath the lip of the walls of the bocce courts that would light the bocce court but not go into the neighborhood. But these are details that would have to be worked out with people who really know bocce and people who really know lighting, and that'll be a further detail. And there's also storage. We enlarged the restroom facility so there'd be enough room for a storage facility for whatever is needed to service both the bocce and the volleyball. Now, in our discussions with the Bocce League, we realized that they've grown very fast, and it's sort of been a kind of a surprise to everyone, and we don't know what the future holds. But we do feel that to keep the park in balance, the 3 bocce courts is really the maximum that the park can accept without keep in balance with the other park uses. So if it should really become a bigger sort of activity, then there may have to be additional venues found. The sections just give you an idea of how we have tried to create places where people can sit and observe the volleyball and the bocce. It gives the park interest, and it creates a sort of a subspace, but at the same time, there's still a visual connection to the gazebo, which is kind of visually the heart of the park. So, and then the other thing that is very important to notice is the relationship to the water, to the shoreline trail, and then there'll also probably park benches and picnic tables here. So the whole thing kind of becomes a whole experience for everyone together. And then the other sections just again give you an idea of how the berms and the grading undulates and creates interest and defines different subspaces. So now we go to the multi-use area. And this is very significant here, that a core idea in this design, and in keeping with the concept of giving the public better access to the bay from Bridgeway, we eliminate the railroad right-of-way in the southern end of the park, and we extend the contours, the contouring, which is a significant aspect of this design, to have the contours undulate and create berms and create the bowl, and extend the lawn area right to the sidewalk. And I'll explain the sidewalk and the bicycle path and so on in a later slide. But this, now there could be some hedges, and I'll explain that later, right at Bridgeway that still might give some definition that's low, but it's particularly important to have this connection to the sidewalk so that now that sidewalk walking along there is not the most pleasant experience, and we want people as they walk along that sidewalk to feel connected to the park and connected to the bay. So the open grass bowl is contoured to be visually connected to Bridgeway and water, eliminating parking on railroad right-of-way between B and Litho Street, and blend this area into the park, thus integrating the park into the neighborhood. The multi-use area is intended for use by the community for individual activities such as playing ball, picnics, frisbee, and birthdays or other special family events. Will also accommodate large local community events such as the 4th of July, Easter, musical activities, and the chili cook-off. So now we go to the beach. We improve the beach with possibility for some water-based activities, reorient the cruising club to open view of water, and rehabilitate shoreline. I will talk about the cruising club in a future slide. The plan is not dependent on the reorientation of the cruising club, but if it's possible to do it, there are some advantages to be derived from it. Improve retaining walls and benches, ADA ramp to the beach, raise contours by 1 foot and add steps and ADA ramp to accommodate sea level changes. So we've been advised that we should at least accommodate for a foot of sea level change in the not too distant future. So we raised the contours up. The gazebo is now at 9 feet above whatever point of reference was being used, and we've raised it to 10. Whether that will or will not be done, this is a schematic master plan. It's advising things to be done. It can be decided in detail which things will be done and when, but we felt that we had to be responsible to at least make some recognition of the fact that there could be some sea level changes. And by introducing the steps down to the beach, which is necessary if we raise the level of the walk, it actually separates the harder surface of the shoreline path from the beach, and the steps actually become a nice kind of transition and something you can sit on, and there's also a handicap ramp. The shoreline path. So the shoreline path comes in from Locust Street and then goes through the park and comes out across Napa Street along the Galilee property. Now this path is a very important element because it ties all these various functions together. And again, this was the big challenge of this design, is how do you have all of these different functions, these different desires, and then linking them together. And the path really does that. So that if people are playing bocce, but maybe there are other members of the family there who want to go for a walk and enjoy the shoreline, go to the beach, it all kind of links it all together. If on the other hand, the people who are enjoying the passive area are intrigued to see what's going on at bocce, they can go over and do that. And that's the whole idea. Is, you know, you mentioned, Pam, a dog in the fight. This is not meant to be a fight. This is to bring people together and make it blend. Pedestrian path that is graded to conform to ADA requirements with benches and picnic areas along the way. The path is integrated with the overall BCD public shoreline path through Sausalito and ties the various park activities together. Now, no bicycling within the park and ample bicycle racks and bollards at access points. I hope one particular council person hears that loud and strong. Bollards, and I mean, we can't, out of fear of having bicycles on the shoreline path, not have a bicycle path. I mean, that would be a shame. So what we need to do is just make sure there aren't any bicycles on it. So it would seem that bollards and signs and having adequate bicycle racks at both ends. And one thing that may be missing here is that there maybe should be a sign that would divert, although I don't believe there's supposed to be bicycles on the shoreline path. There's the other path, which we'll talk about later, for bicycles of various types. But if there were, they could be diverted to the path that they really are supposed to be on. And I might also say that I know there were a few people who mentioned, well, the park is a place where they'd like the children to learn how to ride a bicycle. Well, I mean, you could do it on this bicycle path. The sidewalk along Bridgeway is a bicycle path, and you could do it there. My daughter learned to ride a bicycle on the basketball court. I mean, I think that we really just we're defeating ourselves if we have bicycles on the shoreline path. Now, the bicycle and pedestrian path is a different issue, and there was a particular concern by one of the groups that we met with that they weren't sure that we were maintaining that, and I want to reassure them, as you can see, that we are. The orange path is it's a joint bicycle pedestrian path, and we're not proposing to change that, except that we are advising that at the crosswalks at Litho Street and at Napa Street and at B Street, there be a change in pavement just to announce to the bicyclists that this is an area they're going to be sharing with pedestrian cross traffic, and they may have to look out or slow down a bit. Now, the bicycle lane, which is on the street, is a whole other issue. That's where the faster bicyclists go, and that will not be changed. So the plan limits are outboard of the existing bicycle path, and it will stay the way it is. Now, the Gate 5, the ferry terminal to Gate 5 road path is a whole other issue. And the city council wanted us to be sure to have that be a part of this, but we have to make clear that the path proposal in the study is outside the boundaries of the Dunphy Park Schematic Master Plan, but it does not conflict with it. This master plan could be completely executed, and the proposed ferry terminal to Gate 6 road path could be built with no conflicts. There's just a couple of areas where there would need to be some further study to be compatible, but there's no problem there. So it is recommended that the path study at Bridgeway and Napa Street be revised, and that changes to the pavement at Litho B and Napa Street park entrances be included to mitigate danger from pedestrian cross-traffic interface. Those are the two things that would have to be looked at. It is important to understand, however, that the study is for a very extensive and costly project that involves total replacement of sidewalks, curbs, and street planning over a long distance. This may not be realized for some time. There'll have to be funding from somewhere, I don't know where. It'll be millions of dollars. Thus, the Dunphy Park Schematic Master Plan focuses on the existing joint path and street bicycle lane. Should the path project move forward, there will be no conflicts with the park plan. So this shows you that ferry terminal to Gate 6 road path as it passes by, and it's completely outboard of the plan. At Napa Street, you can see that we would recommend certain alteration to the path at that point, but that's not that's perfectly feasible. It's actually a very knotty area because there's a big power pole with guy wires and all kinds of stuff. So we've made an attempt to deal with that, and I think that's just a matter of getting into the details if this plan goes forward, but there's no conflict here. And you can see a cross-section of what they're proposing, which would be very nice. There would be a sidewalk and a little division and 2 lanes of the slower bicycle traffic, and then there would be the street trees that could remain as they are now or be added to. There could be some bushes along there if they wanted some buffer, and then there's the fast lane. So eelgrass and water traffic. Provide limited access for non-motorized vessels without disruption of eelgrass and wildlife preserve. Now, there was at least one comment at the last hearing of someone who felt that the eelgrass was not something to be concerned about, and so I contacted again some of the people who've been advising us on this, and I will do more, but I do believe, from what I can tell, that eelgrass and other grasses and wetlands and there's more and more talk about our need to preserve habitat, and so it's a big subject, and we feel that at least we should make some effort to be serious about it. So I will, in another slide, we'll talk about the water activities, but essentially what we're trying to do is keep all that to the south, because there already is going to be water traffic from Casa Marina and from the cruising club. So water traffic shall be limited to small boats without keels. Facilities for boats shall be provided at Casa Marina and Cruising Club and shall not extend south of the Cruising Club. The schematic master plan does not detail this area. The city shall determine who will be served by these facilities. Now, there have been at every one of our forums and hearings some people who have expressed a need for some recognition of water traffic and people in small boats. So we're recognizing that, but we have already planned, and hopefully it will go forward, Casa Marina, which is a facility for small boats in the park area. And the cruising club wishes to have some small boat activity attached to it. So that seems like the opportunity. The city will have to decide who is served. Is it all private? Is it going to be some public? I mean, we're not determining that. What we are determining is that that's where the activity should take place, so that it leaves the rest of the area here for the other functions. And it seems to me that that's a good way of balancing all of these various needs. So we met with the cruising club, and they are rightfully concerned that they don't want the plan to totally lock in a situation where the club has to be reoriented, because if there are a number of things that might come up, technical ones in particular, and also there's money involved. So we want to make very clear that this plan is not dependent on the cruising club being reoriented, but it encourages it to be done if possible. If it's not done, then all related boating activity would have to be removed from the south end and coordinated with Casa Marina. If any of you have noticed, there's an awful lot of stuff going on south of the cruising club barge, which really encroaches on the views and so on. And we've talked to the cruising club people, and they understand that. And actually, if this were all reorganized and redone, it could be done in a way that would be best for everyone. And the cruising club lease would have to stipulate that onshore refuse would have to be kept to a minimum and in a designated visually shielded area. All other facilities specifically related to the cruising club, other than parking, would not be permitted onshore. All of these details would have to be worked out. This is just expressing obviously you can see that we're trying to develop here a shoreline that is attractive for everyone, and we have a shoreline trail, and right now you walk along there and it's kind of a mess. I'm not pointing a finger, it's a circumstance that everybody has to deal with, and we're just trying to improve it all together. Now the waterfront community, that's something in every one of these meetings. There are people who come up who are looking to the park to provide all sorts of different facilities that the waterfront people feel they need. And certainly finding a way to better integrate the waterfront and landside communities is an important concern. And should the city of Sausalito determine that public showers, laundry machines, dinghy docks, moorings, etc. are necessary, there are locations available for those functions. But we feel that Dunphy Park is not the appropriate venue. It's a place where everyone is welcome to come, but it's not a place for these kinds of facilities. And looking to Dunphy Park Schematic Master Plan as a vehicle for solving all of the issues concerning the waterfront community will not solve them, and all it will do is delay really facing the larger subject, which really should be a different forum. Access to the park. Again, bollards, bicycle racks, and signage indicating that no bicycles are allowed in the park shall be provided at all entrances. We have designed important entrances at Napa Street and at Litho Street, and also when we have big events and parades, people coming off of Caledonia Street and swarming onto the park, they'll just flow across the bridgeway, and actually with the parking eliminated along the railroad right-of-way, at least over a little more than half of the length, people will just be able to flow right on to the lawn and into the park in a much nicer way than they do now. So the entrances will be defined, and they'll be safe with good crosswalks at Bridgeway. Now, there'll be a limited, small, non-motorized boat access to the beach. No docks or floats other than that provided by Cass Marina or Cruising Club. So there is a possibility for some docks and floats in that area. Well, grading, rolling contoured berms are creating central open grassed bowl while maintaining visual connection to the water from Bridgeway sidewalk. Berms will also provide a certain amount of wind protection. Improve runoff water management to minimize wet soil and eliminate standing water by regrading and installing an engineered subsurface drainage system as required. Planting rolling grass with contoured berms, shade trees, and low water using plants. Improve condition of planting by progressively replacing with more appropriate species. Improve maintenance. I'm not going to go into this too much detail because it's hard in a forum like this, but there is a concept here of how to choose the plants, and predominantly low water requiring lawn and deciduous trees with shrub masses used for screening of parking, low shrubs and ground covers as appropriate. I think those of you who are interested can look into this in more detail. This is not the time to choose the agapanth, what kind of agapanthus. This is more of a concept here. But Paul Leffingwell has carefully looked into plant materials that he feels would survive well here. Actually, this is an area where there has to be a lot of careful work in soil amenities and bringing in new soil. It's a very bad area for plants right now. The current plants, we consulted with the city maintenance and with horticulturists, and everyone agreed that the existing trees are in very bad shape and that really eventually all of them have to be replaced. This also allows for better grading because you can't really grade around an existing tree. So we have to work toward that goal and try to get material in there that really will thrive and will give us the kind of park that we really want. So again, those of you who are interested in plant material, you can look at this and you'll see the various plants that are suggested to choose from. Okay. Okay. So habitat restoration and preservation, well, passive recreation area in undeveloped portion park for viewing restored habitat in the bay and for picnicking, low water native plant demonstration. I won't go any further than that at this point. Eelgrass, this is taken from a report that was made by Merkel in 2008, and so this has been a guideline for us where we have some good potential for eelgrass. And this is a list of the various references. And so actually, that's it.
Thank you very much, Paul. Jacques. And thanks, Paul, for your work on the plants. We have right now 9 speaker cards, but I have a feeling there are people that walked in afterwards that would like to speak. So if you have a speaker card that you picked up from over here and want to pass it forward to me, that would be great. Also, if while you're listening you decide you have something to say, we'll have time at the end to include you. I might check and see how many people do want to speak so we make sure that we leave enough time. As I said, the ground rules are common courtesy. Speak your, thank you. Use your time to speak. Let others speak without interrupting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call 3 names and then have you come up. We're going to use the microphone up here because it's recorded. And when you speak, I might not have pronounced your name correctly. So if you could say your name, and if you are with an organization, that's going to help Alan take down your name. She's very sensitive to having her name misspelled. It's Alan, and very few people get her name right. So she wants to spell your name right. So we're going to start using the 3-minute timer. It's just a good guide to help people be concise. And then if we have more time at the end and you'd like to speak, we'll go through a second round. So, yes. Yes. Mike, Sarah, can you put Mike's email up here?
So my email is mlangford@ci.sausalito.ca.us. It's also, so that everybody knows, the presentation that Jacques gave today is on the website dunphypark.org. And there will be video of this meeting posted to that as soon as we can download the video and everything.
Okay. The first 3, Doreen Gurnard, Chris Kalina, and Mike, how do you pronounce you? Wee, I thought so. Mike Wee.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm on the other side this time. I am a private citizen at this moment, Doreen Gurnard from 300 Napa Street. I just wanted to give you a little background about Galilee Harbor because we are the most immediate neighbor to the park. We actually own 6.8 acres of both land and water parcels, and we are home for 38 households. We've had a historical plan to share the parking. The parking that you saw on that plan that Jacques showed you earlier, a good portion of it in front of our office all the way up to and past the art car is our property that we are willing to share with the community in using the park. And that is something that we have been on board in doing all along. Probably for the last, 20 years we've been we've been waiting to do our parking for this parking to happen as well. Our harbor office borders Dunphy Park, and of course we all actively participate in park activities. We have met with the Friends officially. First time was back in June 2014, and we have discussed some issues that have impacted our community, and yet many in our community feel that some of our issues are not reflected in this plan. And so we would like to, the next person coming up is Chris Kalina. He's our president of our board, and he'll give you a little bit more information, especially regarding our views on parking. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. My name is Chris Kalina. I'm a 20-year resident of Sausalito, a 15-year member of Galilee Harbor, currently serving on the board, and an immediate neighbor to Dunphy Park. I'm also a member of the Cruising Club and a bocce player. Over the years, I've attended many functions held in the park, both as a volunteer worker and a community member. I feel I have a very good understanding of the various park uses and the current users of the park. Galilee Harbor would like to recognize the volunteer work that has been undertaken by the Friends of Dunphy Park, especially the work done by Jacques and Paul over many years. Our members were instrumental in supporting the funding for Measure F that makes park improvements a reality. We understand and support the need for improvements, including paved parking, public facilities, ADA access, and a waterfront path. In saying this, we have some serious concerns over the parking in the proposed plan. First, the significant reduction in parking and the lack of a proper turnaround, coupled with only one point of entry and exit, has the potential to impact our residents' ability to access our shared parking at night. The park currently has 2 points of access, one in the parking lot and one on the railroad strip. The railroad strip houses all parking for special events and weekly bocce games. The main parking lot accommodates the Cruising Club, Cass Marina, UCSF kayakers, and public park users. If we are trying to renovate the park to ultimately increase users to the park, we can't understand why the parking has been reduced. Second, I understand that there are reasons why we cannot keep the parking lot by the Cruising Club. However, in doing so, why are we consolidating all the high traffic uses to the northeast corner of the park? Moving the bocce court to this corner does not make sense from a parking flow perspective. While I concede that the 70 spaces will not be filled every day, during the high use times, Friday through Sunday, I feel we will often find this parking lot full, which may cause park users to look elsewhere, most likely going to our lot. Galilee Harbor does not want to become the parking police. Currently, this overflow happens a handful of times per year, but with this plan, I could see it happening on a weekly basis. Third, we are concerned that the current parking plan would require the removal of all the biggest trees in the park. We would like, during the park renovation, to see the most trees possible saved. In conclusion, while we recognize the need for park improvements, we do not want to see them come at the expense of the users of the park, the tenants of the park, or the neighbors of the park. We look forward to working with the Friends and the city to address these concerns in the very near future.
Thanks, Chris. And Mike? Up after that will be Sue Verhalen.
Hi, I'm Mike Wee.
Tom Hoover.
Hi, I'm Mike Wee, and I'm a former resident of Bridgeway Marina, current resident of Galilee Harbor, so I've experienced intimately the park from both ends, as a commuter, as a user, as a bocce player, and I have been personally involved as a volunteer for Measure F to try to get this money through so that we could do these renovations. And I hope that the site plan will be revised in such a way so that I don't regret that. We have several design concerns that we expressed to the Friends and the Schematic Plan developers in June 2015 that we don't think were fully considered beyond the parking which Chris addressed. Namely, in specific, the movement of all of the activity centers to the northeast corner of the park. What I think is lacking from the plan now is a recognition of the real actual uses of the park, the way it's used and the way that it will continue to be used, that this is a bit utopian and ignorance of. In reality, what used to be the railroad strip is a means of access. It's an area that bikes go through, walkers go through, so as not to have to be on the road sharing the sidewalk as it's proposed in the plan. It is also a way that people access the corner of the park that the bocce court is in. In the current plan here, if you can look at any overhead satellite map, you'll see, if you permit me for a second, in real life, people come in
Mike?
here, and people come in over here, and you can see from the tread of foot traffic in a satellite view that there's a walking path right here, because they don't want to go this way or this way. If you do this here, and you cut off all this here, what you're really going to have is bikes here, because you're not going to have a bike cop posted here, right? And you're going to have people coming through here nonetheless through this proposed grass bowl amphitheater. The other reality of the grass bowl amphitheater, and the more important one, is if you are a current user of the park, what you know is this. The areas of the park that don't have a specific use, such as bocce, are ceded to the people who have nowhere else to go. And when you do this plan, and you give 2/3 of the park to nothing, and 1/3 of the park has all the activities congested into one area where they're on top of each other, what ends up happening is this little picnic area here is what used to be the kitchen pantry. This is for people who don't have anywhere else. And this is an area that Single women aren't going to want to go. Mothers aren't going to want to go. Dog walkers aren't going to want to go. No one's going to want to go. Everyone's going to be here by the parking lot. And with the cruising club turned this way, forgive me 1 second, with the cruising club turned this way as it's actually going to be, not like this plan, this isn't even a waterfront view, which is what was offered to Bocce. They have a better view here than they're going to have with the cruising club here. They were never offered to be here. They were just offered this. And that's not even real. So I just want us to focus a little bit on what actually happens in the park and not a fantasy.
Thank you. Sue and Tom, and then Steve Buckley. So Sue, Tom, Steve. No. No, I'm just calling you up so you're primed. Yeah.
I'm Sue Verhollen. I live at Galilee Harbor. I've been there for 30 years. I also play bocce ball, both here in Sausalito and I play in the leagues in San Rafael. I have quite a few concerns about the plan as it's proposed. And I want you all to know I'm not speaking for my community, I'm speaking for me. You know, as someone who lives here and uses the facilities here, and this is my home. First of all, I'm an old lady, folks. I'm 71, I'm still working a 40-hour week up at the county. When I get home at night, often I am one of the last people that has a space to park. If there's an event going at the cruising club, there may not be a place for me to park. And I pay for that parking space every month. And I don't know what's going to happen when you reduce the number of spaces that you have at Dunphy Park. My understanding is that the parking that's shared with Galilee is supposed to be parking for Galilee from 5 o'clock onwards. So I can't see how you can reduce the number of spaces you have when you have events that will be going on after 5 o'clock at Dunphy, most often at the cruising club. So that concerns me. Right now, Galilee has had a waterfront path that was part of our project and that we put in. That is one of our fire lanes so that there's access for the fire department. I'm not clear on how the proposed parking here allows that fire lane to remain open so that there is access, for the, fire trucks, through that, if they would do that at all. That's another question that I have about how this does or doesn't change access to, if I need those public services available to me in case of fire. And we have had boats on fire down there at Galilee, so it's a real issue for us. The other thing about the path that we have that's along the shoreline, that's not, we normally thought that was going to be for walking. We do have a multi-use path at the back or at the west end, I forget, at the Bridgeway side of our property. And you aren't going to be finding those people that have rented their bikes in San Francisco and have come over and biked to Sausalito and that are going to go back on the ferry. They're not using that multi-use path. They're using the shoreline path. And I agree with Mike that you aren't going to be finding people staying off of what you're proposing as a shoreline path for pedestrians. They aren't going to be parking them at your parking things either. I want to take one more minute. I really want the bocce ball courts back there. This is a 20-minute plan. I mean a 20-year plan, or or so. I would like you to make room for 4 courts designed a little bit differently than they are there, and to get some more information from having played bocce ball up in San Rafael. There's better designs to incorporate more courts in a smaller space than we currently have there at bocce. Thank you.
And after Tom, it's going to be Paul Rogers. Steve is going to take a pass right now.
Hi, my name is Tom Hoover, and like in the second part of Beowulf, I've lived here full 50 winters now and worked in Sausalito. I lived and worked in Bob's Boatyard from 40 years ago, And I've been a member of Galilee Harbor as that has morphed, and I was actually working in Bob's Boatyard the morning it was illegally destroyed by the city. And I am also a member of the Cruising Club, and I've been a member of the Cruising Club since 1978. And I remember Dunphy Park in some sort of existence in the 70s. And so one of the things that I would like to say is that it's not really good to move the Cruising Club, because if you will note, it protects the shoreline that's in front of it and has not eroded. Well, anyway, where the point is out there, as you go out to the lagoon, that has eroded way. There was a tree way, way out there when the park was first built. And so there are some there's some concern about erosion, and the Cruising Club itself is a protection against that waterfront. And so Michael Uwe noted that the path needs moving, and so I've noted that too, the way that it goes through. One of the things that I thought was really foolish is to put the bocce and the volleyball courts right on top of each other, and the volleyball courts require space around them because there's always people. I played volleyball, since a kid, and I've watched people play. And to have those people stepping on each other is not a good idea. It's best to keep the bocce courts where they are and add in that area. And there were plants along there to protect the lagoon. I don't know if they're going to cut them down. I am someone who does not want to see the plants all cut down. I've noted that what those plants were originally for is as a windbreak. The wind roars through this town, as anyone who's lived here any length of time knows. And so that was the original reason for planting the trees. And in speaking of the derelicts, one of the reasons that those things the trees disappeared is because they cut them all down to make fires when there was a fire pit there, and they lived in the fire pit. And no one, just as he said, no one could use the fire pit. Anyone, not much less, mothers and children. And also, I have to disagree in terms of bringing it out to the street. I think that also the noise pollution and the sight pollution from the cars going along Bridgeway, that the park needs to be protected from the street rather than opening the park out into the street. And also, once again, as he said, as it is now, I myself, you go behind the hedge and you come off of Bridgeway, and that is a way of getting away from the pollution of the traffic on Bridgeway, which is pretty heavy. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, parking is a disaster, and others will give you more precise details. And so, and lastly, this is to be a community park, not a public park. That's something to think about in terms of the public access trail.
And after Paul will be Tammy, and then Ray Gerges.
Good evening. Pleasure to address this esteemed body politic. My name is Paul Rogers. I'm a resident of Sausalito since, I don't know, shortly after the first Gulf War, I think is when I came here. I'm a member of the Sausalito Lions Club. I'm a former Parks and Rec commissioner. And I'm here on behalf of the Sausalito Bocce League members and speaking with them. Kind of give our history. After the November meeting, there was a coalition created of what we call the active users, the Cruising Club, the Galilee Harbor, Cascadley, ourselves in the Bocce League, and I'm here to speak specifically on the Bocce League. And so at that time, Dr. Ben Brown had initiated a number of meetings with the Bocce League captains to kind of formulate a strategy. He worked diligently with Paul and Jacques, came up with the design that we see now. And some of the needs that we had talked about at the time is, seriously, it was about the drainage, the extra court, so forth, the movement. But I think the one thing that we want to keep in mind is the Bocce League has 175 registered members. Okay, of that 175, about 2/3 are registered voters in the city of Sausalito, and a good portion of those supported Measure F with the understanding that the bocce courts would be addressed to our needs. And so I think Ben has done a great job meeting with the Friends of Dunphy Park, and we wholeheartedly support what we see now. Thanks.
Thank you. Tammy, Ray, and then Sherwin Smith.
Hi, I'm Tammy Blanchard. I'm a resident of Sausalito and a bocce player. I think I have more questions than a statement. I'm really excited to see the changes that are going to happen in the park, and I want to recognize all of the work that the Friends of Dunphy has put into this, and the community at large. I do, after listening to Mike, I kind of think I agree with him about congesting the one corner in the northeast of the park. I do see that as a flow problem. The Bocce League, since I've been playing in 2005, has gone from one court and a few teams on Friday night to we raised the money and built another court, and those leagues are full. We've flowed over to Saturday and Thursday, and now most of the league has grown so much that each team doesn't even get to play every week. You get a bye, and that means you're not doing what you're doing. And it's a great community effort to be out and playing bocce. It's not high tech. There's no phones. You know, you're out by the water. You're enjoying your friends. You're hanging out with your community, and there's a lot of us. And we use the park 3 or 4 days a week. There's a senior league. There's the city league, and it could grow. So I'm not sure that 3 is enough. And there may be a way to do it so it's not doesn't take up so much of the park if we moved it closer to where it was before. Okay, so my question is, and I don't know who would be able to answer this, is how long is this plan going to take? Is it going to be phases? Is it going to take all of the money that we have in the budget for this park? More than what we have in this budget? I mean, it's not clear to me what, it seems like it's going to be more than we have in Measure F, to me. And I'm not an expert on this, believe me.
So I think your questions are timeline and money, and that sounds like a Mike question.
So, like, once you dig out the park, is it like you're going to level the whole thing? And I mean, I don't understand. It seems much bigger than I thought it was.
Okay. So process-wise, we're going to answer the questions at the end. So you've got those down. So timeline and money. Okay. Next is Ray Sherwin-Smith, and then Heather Richard.
Yes, I am Ray Gerges. I've been a 60-year resident of Sausalito. I've been living here long enough so that I was one of the minor volunteers that helped create the park in those early days. I could even remember before it was a park when it was the city dump. My comments are going to be restricted to the passive area at the extreme south end.
You get an automatic 3 more minutes.
I won't take that long. I'm strongly in favor of the concept plan. I like the idea very much. The southern end indicates 3 picnic areas. One in the preservation area, and one at the extreme south end of the active area. That's a very good idea. I like the idea very much. But I do believe that it's going to be a long walk from a parking area with picnic baskets and little kids and so forth to get to those picnic areas at the extreme south end. Therefore, I think that there should be a small parking area located at the southern end of this area, maybe a half a dozen spaces to accommodate the picnic areas. And my other thought is that being a senior, I'm strongly in favor of park benches. But I also insist that they have backs on them. Seniors do not like to sit on park benches that don't have backrests. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sherwin-Smith, Heather Richard, and Terry Tucker.
Hi, Sherwin-Smith. Not quite as long a resident as Bob, but I've been on the waterfront to some degree or another since '83. At the risk of saying, hey, there's another thought for this area, I want to suggest that something that might work for some of the things that have been brought out as a reason for doing this, which is public access to the bay, a community gathering place, is I've been involved in a rowing club that I started in 1985, and prior to that, another rowing club that started in '83. It still exists in the Schoonmaker Marina, which is a lovely place. It is very difficult to think of sustaining a rowing club in a retail operation, a retail space for the foreseeable future. And I've always wanted, and our rowers have always wanted, to leave the community of Sausalito with a rowing club in perpetuity. The nice things about a rowing club is, number one, obviously water recreation gets people out on the bay. The other thing is we don't like to be near the shoreline, therefore we don't interfere with the idea of introducing natural grasses, natural areas. So very limited to no impact on shorelines. It basically gives a very direct public connection to the bay. It also happens, for the most part, in the early mornings, does not conflict with later morning and afternoon activities. So as I say, it's like a limited impact on the shoreline. And the other thing is that it gets people out onto the bay in a way that very few other things do with so little impact on the shoreline. So I'm just putting a plug in for the concept of thinking about, could there be a place at either end, not certainly in the middle of the park, that would be inappropriate, but to either side of this community gathering place, could there be a place that a rowing operation could be inserted and could perhaps set up there so that we could provide rowing on the bay for the community for decades to come. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Heather, then Terry Tucker, and Betsy Showman. Okay.
Hi, I'm Heather Richard. I'm a 15-year resident of Sausalito. I am a resident of Galilee Harbor, neighboring the park, but I'm here representing the Cass Skidley Marina Sausalito Community Boating Center project, of which I'm the president of the board currently as a volunteer. And we've really enjoyed this process of working closer with our neighbors and applaud the efforts of the Friends of Dunphy Park, and I'd like to thank them publicly for the work that they've done as well. And with the new leadership at the Cruising Club, we're actually really looking forward to working more closely with them as well to develop programs together. And I have 2 points to make tonight. We can't foresee exactly at this moment what the Cass Skidley Marina Sausalito Community Boating Center is going to look like in 5 years, or what the traffic will be generated there. We hope it will be very successful, and that will expand the users of the park at that point. So we would really like to make sure that it's considered that expanding the number of parking spaces is very much a possibility, that we don't limit the possibility of expanding the parking down the road. And our second concern is just with the orientation or reorientation of the Cruising Club. The way that it's shown is that the Cruising Club and the Sausalito Community Boating Center are sharing one single entrance. And it may not be the best use of facilities. There may be conflicting types of activities going on at the Cruising Club, parties, weddings, things like that, where there's drinking going on and we've got children's programs running, and using the same entrance may not be an appropriate use of that ramp, basically. So we'd like to consider that the Cruising Club, even if they do reorient, get to keep their own separate entrance to their facility, and that ours is simply a fire escape for them. Thank you.
Terry, Betsy, and Michael Rex.
Yes, my name is Terry Tucker. I'm the current Commodore of the Sausalito Cruising Club. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the planning of Dunphy Park. We have met with Jacques, Paul, Michael Rex, Cass Skidley Marina, Adam, and I feel strongly that all parties' visions for the park are very, very sincere. Aside from the obvious of having our gangway into a beautiful landscape, the Cruising Club is a business with almost 500 local members. Our main concerns are access to our facilities for our members, vendors, and the possible need of emergency vehicles being able to gain access to our building. The Cruising Club is looking forward to working with the city and our neighbors to host functions while our facility is not in use. We are expanding our junior and member boating programs. Our meetings with our neighbors and the city have been very positive so far, and we are excited to see the plan come to life. Something that's come up recently about the rotation of the barge is our effect on Galilee with our evening activities as far as noise levels and their quality of life. Unless that can be addressed successfully, that almost negates the ability to rotate the barge, aside from some other technical issues. So that's just another issue we have to work through. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy? And then lastly, Michael Rex. I'm sorry. Okay, Betsy left, so Michael Rex.
Okay, hi, Michael Rex, local architect, and I think we all need to thank the Friends for their hard work to take the initiative, donate their time, and propose a vision for the community to consider. There's a lot of this plan I like and support. Among them is bringing the park to Bridgeway. I think it opens up and connects our park to the community in a very bold and meaningful way. I also think turning the Cruising Club around is something that should be continually explored, because I think it'll open up views of the water that will be amazed, the before and after. And I know there's concerns about some noise to Galilee, but I'd like that concern to be studied. Maybe there's ways of mitigating that. It also gives us an opportunity to enhance the shoreline that front the Cruising Club. There are some other areas that I'm quite concerned about. I think the basic premise of segregating the park into two zones and grouping all the activities at the north end is going to create congestion and conflict, and I'm not sure it's necessary. I think the parking needs a further study on supply and demand. We see that there's 70 cars here, but I haven't seen the numbers of what the demand is to determine whether the 70 cars is sufficient. But I have two serious concerns. One is the north-south greenway, the bike path that's been planned along Bridgeway between the park and Bridgeway. That's a regional transportation corridor, so we can start commuting by bike. And it does require a few feet at Dunphy Park, so to suggest that that plan could be inserted without conflict to the plan, I don't think is well-founded. We've asked that the north-south greenway, which has been planned, be incorporated in this plan, and it hasn't yet, and I think it still needs to be. One puts those kind of routes in place bit by bit, segment by segment, when the opportunity presents itself, so eventually you have a continuous plan. This is an opportunity for 3 blocks of that plan, so it should be included. The last one is, while we need to protect and enhance our natural resources whenever we can, because we all agree how important that is, this park, primarily its character should be natural, but its focus and primary use should be recreation. This is not a wilderness, it's our park. And historically, what makes Sausalito so unique is the activity along our waterfront, and roping off the shoreline from Dunphy Park to small watercraft is misguided. It simply won't work. You can't put signs out there and telling paddle boards and kayaks to stay in a channel. That dotted line is a fantasy. It's simply a mistake. It's misguided. I'd like to see the facts where there's a conflict between nature and that activity. I haven't seen it yet. I don't think there is one. And if there is, we need a balance. And roping off our waterfront, off our park, is not a balance. So I think that, among all issues, needs to be revisited. But overall, I'm thrilled that we're moving forward with master plan. It's sorely needed. There's a lot of good stuff here and a lot of hard work that went into it, and I think we have to continue the dialogue so we all have our needs met and we have the best plan possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Those are the speakers for whom I have cards. Has the conversation stimulated comments that others of you would like to make? Let's make sure that we have everyone who hasn't spoken first. Okay, 1. How many others? 2. You spoke before. 3, 4, 5. Can you remember those numbers that I just pointed out to you? Okay. If you would come up to the microphone, since those of you who haven't filled out a speaker card, I don't know your name, if you just state your name and if we need to spell it so we have it for the record. We'll keep to the 3 minutes, and then at the end of that, we have at least one question regarding time frame and budget. So.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Jennifer Spinach from Locust Street. I've lived here since '84. I didn't know much about this because I was in Connecticut for the summer, so I see this and I have a couple concerns. The turning of the cruising club, one for the erosion of the property, but also for the houses to the north of it. The way it goes it blocks views for them, and it also makes noise go to them. I'm just thinking outside of the box. And the bocce courts were so great over in that corner. All you need to do is add another one over there, separate the congestion. I think it's too much congestion up here. And I think with the park right up to the roadway, you have little kids, you have balls, you have everything flying out into the road. I just can't imagine some little kid getting hit or a dog or anything happening because there's not a break. Just need a little break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marv Hovatter. I use the park. I play bocce. I really had a question. We've heard a lot of comments tonight about the parking, and we've heard a number of what this parking plan is. How many parking places are there now? Now, I know it's a little difficult because it bends around the corner. We've got them in front of the cruising club. We're also parking all along the front there, and I agree with the last lady's comment that I think a boundary should still be there, which would include parking. So does anybody have a number in a situation where we use all the parking there? How many parking places are there now across the front and down around to the cruising club?
Okay. Here.
Thank you. Currently, the parking here to here, not including the strip, is 64 spaces. The strip itself, with cars parked along this way and even on the busiest events parked parallel to Bridgeway, would be approximately another 65 spaces. So currently there's almost 130 spaces, and that's conservative. On a busy 4th of July, there could probably be 150 cars in the park. And our main concern with concentrating all the high-use facilities here is you have, these are ADA, but there's 8 or 9 spaces here, and so we start stacking up cars, 10, 11, 12. As soon as we reach 10 or 15 cars in the park, people will begin to park and fill up the parking this way. And okay. So essentially we see the parking being reduced by about 56%.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Heather Wilcox, and I'm a member of Galley Harbor. My main concern really is for the habitat that come and migrate here from probably November through the spring. And they do kind of congregate all around that spit, just on the other, I believe, the south end of the park. So my concern with, and I think people want to use kayaks, and I think it's a really important usage, but I do think that there's a limited time during the winter months that we have to be cautious about interfering with the habitat that come here from Alaska. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay. Before we get to round two, is there anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to say anything? Yes, sir. 1, 2.
I'm Paul LeBaron. I'm a member of the Cruising Club, and my only two concerns are food delivery to the Cruising Club, how to get a big truck in there, and then also if you turn the barge around, there's a big rock out there that I don't know how we're going to get rid of it to turn the barge around. So there's a very large rock that hopefully somebody's got it in their plans to remove and to dredge, because there's no other way to turn the barge around. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Chris Bond's the name. I am with the Cruising Club. I'm the chair of the what we call the Dunphy Park Committee. But I'm not here to represent the club. I just have a question about the mixed use there, because I understand that there's berms there, and if you've seen like the Zydeco Festival, I don't see how you're going to have people there in these undulating berms being able to see the show going on. And I'm just have a question that I hope Jacques can answer, which is, you know, are the sight lines for music going to be affected by those berms? Because you know, music in the park is a nice thing. It happens 3-4 times a year, and so I'm just a little curious about that. But I do also want to thank Jacques and Paul, because Cruising Club did meet with the friends, and they were open to hearing our ideas, and actually, you know, we were able to decouple the whole movement, rotation of the club from the plan as a whole, which is really a good thing, because that won't hold this up. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll come back to that question at the end. Okay, round two. We have 1, 2, okay, 3. Oh, you haven't spoken yet. Come on up.
My name is Linda Lee, and I've been a resident in Sausalito on the waterfront for 6 years. Just looking at this plan, and in particular talking about reorienting the Cruising Club, regardless, I don't understand how emergency vehicles get back to service any needs at the Cruising Club or at Cass Marina. I don't understand the access.
Let's put that on the list, and we'll answer that at the end as best as can be answered. Okay, sir?
The 2 points that I want to
remind us of your name
again.
again.
My name is Tom Hoover, and one of the things is that being a senior citizen, having only one set of toilets at one place, I think is a bad plan. I think you need toilets at both at 2 entrances, because if you're an older person, as I've discovered, unfortunately aging, that having to walk from one end to the other if it's time to do your duties, that's a bad plan and makes it difficult for people. The next is the orientation of the Cruising Club to the weather, and let me go and show.
Sir?
And anyone who knows anything, has lived here and knows anything about the winter swells, the Cruising Club here is still protected that way. When you turn it this way, and when the winter time comes and the swells, you're going to have to be dealing with how to moor it properly, because it's going to do this. And we know that very well in Galilee Harbor from our larger boats when they have to face against the winter swells. And so that this is also, I don't know, geologically, oceanographically, not the best thing to do, because with that big heavy barge rocking back and forth, and with the things going on here, it's not going to do any good for any of the new ramps or facilities that are built there as well, you know. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, and why don't you come on up? And I forgot your name? Sue? Okay. Are there any others that are going to say comments? Because after Sue speaks, or I forgot your name? Ray Gerges. Sue and Ray speak. We're going to take a 30-second break in case any of you want to leave. I saw some people were leaving. And then we have questions on timeline, money, sightlines.
Sue Verhollen, for a second go-around, I have two comments and then one process question. As far as, I want to reinforce what Tom was saying about the cruising club. I am on the southmost dock at Galilee, out on the end. And my boat happens to face in the same orientation that the cruising club does now. My neighbor right across the dock, Heather Richard, who talked earlier, hers will get those broad-sized waves that Tom talked about coming in. I can weather the storm much more easily than she can. She, in fact, must take her boat out and bring it around to the third side. We're on a triangular dock. She brings it around to the third side just so she and her children can be safe on their boat. That much bigger a barge is not going to be able to take that broadside weather that comes in from there, and it gets pretty dicey at times. I also question how you're going to pay for the dredging it's going to take to move that thing that's been sitting there for all these years. It's a big piece of equipment. It's a big piece of boat, and it's going to be a lot of dredging. And let me tell you, from Galilee, we've learned that could be very, very expensive, you know, with stuff. The second comment has to do with what they call the multi-use area. I want to reinforce about what Mike said about if you don't occupy it, it's going to be inhabited. At Galilee, as part of our public amenities, we had a ADA accessible picnic table out there right at the edge of the marsh, right along our path, and we had to move that inside our little fence area because it began to be occupied. At an earlier time than that, we had people sleeping in the marsh up at the edge by our, you know, our pathway that we had at that time. And I don't know if how many of you in this room remember, Dunphy Park used to have a kitchen barbecue area, and that got occupied too. And then people stopped using the park. Mothers weren't going to take their kids there anymore. And in fact, even in this council room, I remember one of those discussions at the council where they came to the decision about they took that whole facility out of that park because it had been occupied. And I really want you to consider if you have your uses spread out around it where there's room for each activity to happen, that will be, I think, better use, and people can not be jammed in with one another, because all the things that are happening there are all social, and where you're going to have a little bit larger group than you would at home. My question goes to, for process, when, since this is kind of a master plan, and if I'm wrong about that idea that I have in my head about that, but there may be some things that we say, okay, we want to make room or have it in the plan, but we're not funding it at this time. Maybe they can get bocce to pay for another court, or, you know, or whatever else down the road. What is the process when you're deciding about when you get the numbers back? Well, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to do bocce ball courts. It's going to be, you know, Y to put in a bathroom here and another one there, or electricity to certain parts. Are you going to prioritize? My understanding is we still don't even have a 1.8 million left of that money, that some of it was allocated to Robin Sweeney Park, so we really have less than that. How are you going to prioritize about what we can actually afford to pay for as opposed to the things that people said they wanted and you thought was a great idea?
Okay, well, that's a city question, and we'll bring that up along with the other questions. Ray? And we have one more comment? Two more comments? Anyone else? Three more comments. And then I do want to leave enough time for the questions to be answered.
There was a comment regarding the accessibility for kayaks and paddle boards. and with the comment that there should not be any signs out there prohibiting those boats from coming in. I strongly support any concept. I'm strongly against any concept that would restrict or keep out those small boats. I own a paddle. I own a kayak and a canoe myself, and I don't think there'll be very much traffic for those kind of small boats coming in to Dunphy Park. But by no means should there never be any signs there that say "Don't come in."
Thank you. Okay, we have two more people or three?
Hi. Hi. My name is Karen Floney. I have been a Sausalito resident for 25 years. I'm over on Turney Street. A couple of things. This all seems so drastic, like big drastic changes. I'm not sure we need to go this drastic. It's a pretty beautiful park that I think needs better upkeep of the grassy area. And so a couple of comments off the top. I wonder why we need to add more concrete in the world. Why do we need to have that path be concrete, going right along the edge of the water? Cannot not be a nice dirt path or some other kind of path? And perhaps that may also address where bikers feel like it's a continuation of a bike path. I also totally agree with the folks that have come up and said, why is everything congested on one side? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I guess my last question is on the parking. It seems like the people that have talked about the need for more, we're reducing the number of parking spaces, and also the several people have talked about needing some sort of separation between the very busy Bridgeway and noisy and the park itself. That could be settled in one clean sweep if we left the parking that is there. It definitely does not make sense to me to have the park come right up to the edge of Bridgeway. It's a busy, busy road. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have the fellow in the back who has not spoken, and then we'll come back to you?
My name is Dennis Hanetta, and my wife and I live a few blocks from the park, and we go there several times a week. We don't play bocce ball. We just like to go to the park and hang out and watch the birds and the bay and check out the views. And I think the only things that are important to us are really just more like comfort and safety. I think that whatever is done to the park, I hope that it's like a high priority, that there's not little hiding places where people are going to congregate that make my wife feel unsafe, or so we don't have to breathe other people's cigarette or pot smoke or whatever they happen to be doing. It also seems like there's a lot of good ideas for the park improvements, but it also seems kind of like they could just fix a few things that are wrong with the park, and it'd be pretty awesome. Like build another bocce court where it is, and maybe fix the parking lot, and I don't know, because it's a really nice park the way that it is. It just needs a few improvements. I'd love to see like more garbage cans and maybe no smoking signs, and maybe a crosswalk across Bridgeway that has some lights or something, so that when we're crossing the street or when other people are crossing the street, it's safer. But those are our concerns. Thanks.
Thank you.
Paul Rogers. I spoke about the bocce courts that's done, but kind of let the commission know the players in the corner, the Cruising Club, the Cascadley, and Galilee Harbor, we are actually meeting on a regular basis, and we'll be speaking one voice because we look at our future as we look at 3- and 5-year plans for the activities in that corner, which could include boating activities through the city, out of the Cruising Club, out of Cascadley. So there will be more input coming that will deal more with the waterfront activities, but that will be spoken to on a unified basis. It won't be individually as we've done here tonight. So there is a coalition that's working so that we can all get that together in that corner and present that at a later time.
Thank you. Let's take a 30-second break so that if you want to leave, you can just sneak out. And then we'll have, I think we have 4 or 5 questions. And Mike Langford, I think, is the best one to answer those. So 30 seconds, and then we'll come back to the questions. Okay, if you can retake a seat. Okay. Mike, do you want to answer questions from there? Do you want to come up here? How would you prefer to do this?
I'm a little under the weather, so I'd prefer to
Okay.
sit if that's okay with everybody. So first thing here, let me figure out how to turn the camera on me. Camera one. Again, for everybody at home and everybody that wants to relive this great night that we've had here. Jonathan Goldman is our Public Works Director, and he's extremely familiar with the timeline. And so if it's okay with you, Jonathan, I'll start, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, and don't be shy. So the timeline is we have this meeting here with the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then we're going to have another one next week. And then it goes to the task force there that was picked earlier today. And they will be listening to everything. They'll probably be looking at these great notes that we have here, taking it all in and seeing what they saw as priorities and what they think, in their opinion, what changes, if changes, should be made. Of course, then those would be discussed with the friends. There may be some disagreement. There may be some agreement. We'll see where that goes. But ultimately, this will then go to the city council next. And the city council, as a property owner, they will be the ones that vote on what this is going to look like. Again, where is the volleyball going to be? Not what kind of sand we're going to put in there. Where is the bocce ball courts? Not what kind of surface is going to be there. There was talk about the path and why we have to do things. Certain things are ADA mandated. We have to do them. The parking lot is BCDC. We've got a dirt lot next to our very special bay, and we've got lots of runoff going in there. We have to address those issues by law. But it is possible that future on that the path is of a different surface than concrete. But the biggest thing that we have to worry about there is, one, is it ADA accessible? Two, is it something that can be easily maintained? As Galilee Harbor knows, they tried the DG, and DG by itself doesn't work very well. You need to do something in there so that it works right and it's accessible to everybody. Once it goes to City Council and City Council adopts the plan, the next phase would be to go out and hire a landscape architect. Now, Jacques and Paul have done a yeoman's work on all of this, but they've told us they don't want to take that part on. What they'd like to do is be as a capacity as advisors, so as questions come up, they can help. But we bring in a professional landscape architect, someone who's very familiar with parks, to come up and draw up the plans. From that point, as the landscape architect puts everything together, that's when we start to really identify what the costs of everything is going to be. It's a little too early for us to talk about costs right now because we're still talking about conceptual things. But once we pick this as the plan, a landscape architect can say, look, you're putting in this many parking spaces, there's very little grading to do, it's going to cost about this much. We know that a restroom can cost anywhere from $200,000 up to $800,000. It depends on what we want to pick. The bocce ball courts can cost about $14,000 based on what we did when we added the second court. There's numbers for grading, and you know how much the sod's going to cost and approximately how much PVC pipe you're going to need for the sprinklers. Those are all things that are going to be put together. Once that package is put together, when we go out to bid, we will ask the contractors who bid on it to break it down into different sections. What does this much cost? What does this much cost? What does this much cost? And that way we can stay within our $1.8 million budget. Now, there are certain things that you want to do. You don't want to do half the parking lot because when you come back, it's going to cost you that much all over again. So there's certain things you have to do at the time that you're doing it. Let's just say as we go through the priorities, people say, you know what, we really want a bathroom, but we can wait another year. Well, we'd be foolish not to at least put in the plumbing for that bathroom so that the following year all we have to do is get one and build it on that site. So again, as we take it out to bid, as we get closer to bid, we'll know the numbers. Once we go to bid, we'll know the exact numbers, and we'll have things broken down into sections so that the City Council can decide what needs to be done first, what's a priority. There was a question on how many spaces there are. The information was correct. Something that's interesting about the when cars are parked on the dirt lot, as Jacques mentioned before, you can squeeze a lot more cars into an unofficial parking lot than you can into an official parking lot. That area where the dirt is actually only wide enough for what they call single gang parking, meaning there could only be parking head-in parking on one side of that dirt strip. If you put a car on the other side, suddenly you don't have the required space that's required by law and code. There was a question about the mixed use and the berms and how it would work with concerts and such. The area of the grass bowl is very much like what's there right now in size and even in the berming. There's a little area where the berm is removed, or excuse me, where there is no berm now, that there is a berm. And so it creates a bowl feeling throughout that. And again, as we get into more details, we get out there, we'll be working on that and making sure that the park is sufficient for the uses that we have now in our great music concerts that we have out there with 4th of July and then the mixed use with Easter and everything else that we do out there. There was a question about emergency access. Any plan that goes through the city planning process has to be reviewed by the fire department and the fire chief, and they will make sure that there is proper access for every one of the facilities within the park, Cruising Club, Cass Marina, Galilee Harbor, all throughout. In fact, one of the things when we've talked to the fire department as well as the police department is they liked the fact that the restroom was close to the parking lot, so that way it's easy for them to patrol and make sure that there isn't nefarious activities going on there. Talked a little bit, there was a question about the money and prioritization. I discussed that again. When we know the hard costs, that way we can start making the tough choices on what do we do first. Something that's interesting to say on that, there's people say, oh, well, go get a grant. You know, there's lots of grants available. Most of these grants will not give you a dime until you have a plan going to go forward. And a lot of them won't give you a dime until you have a dime to match that. So we're very fortunate that we have Measure F, so we can go out and we can say, look, we have $1.8 million to do this project. We just need $100,000 so we can turn that little peninsula into an island. Will the Wildlife Fund or, you know, Friends of Birds or somebody give us that extra $100,000 to do it? That makes it a lot easier to go out and get funds from independent resources like that. And then again, going down on my notes here, there was the question about the path surface. And, you know, as we move forward, there are choices other than concrete, but ADA accessibility and ease of maintenance have to be a priority on that because it's pointless to put out a path that doesn't work. So if the council has other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know that there's some questions that came up that Jacques would like to answer if the council would like to entertain that.
Yeah, Jacques, if you want to answer some questions. I don't know if we have questions. We're a hearing body tonight. I think we just wanted to hear. I do have some comments to make. We can take it back to us right before we close. If we could do this really quickly, Jacques.
Yeah, well, I think I just want to make a general comment that there has been an opinion expressed or certainly implied that the park as it exists now is fine for a lot of people and that maybe it needs just a little bit of improvement. Well, that's a decision that all the citizens of Sausalito have to make. And I would say that the citizens of Sausalito should come out and express themselves more about this. This did not come out in the forum, but I realize that there's a dynamic now that's a bit strange because the time that we started this, there weren't any funds to create this park right away. And then all of a sudden now the Proposition F has been passed. Of course, people, particularly in the near vicinity, all of a sudden say, oh my God, this could actually happen. So now all of this comes out. Well, so now the rest of the community can't sit back and we have to find out, well, what does the community want? Do we need a new forum? I don't know. I can tell you that we did our investigation about the condition of the soil, the drainage, the condition of the trees, the myoporums that are near where the bocce ball is are diseased, and the trees fall down, limbs fall on cars. Fine, you can just do a laissez-faire and come what may, but you know, we've looked at it responsibly, and something does have to be done, and you have to do it in a serious way. Now, I completely failed to mention that there have been some negotiations with the Bridgeway Marina regarding their property, and the Humboldt Street that runs through to the park. That area may have some parking that relates to the negotiations that are going on, and we made a recommendation that a certain area there, right where Mike is pointing, that there be a reserve there of some parking that at least during the daytime would be for Dunphy Park, and bicycle racks, and maybe a secondary small toilet. So that actually, I forgot to mention that, and a number of people were concerned about that, and that does make good sense. So I want to make sure that was understood. And I think that Mike really, you know, this is going to be ongoing, so we can't answer all your questions now. It's all being recorded, and we'll take it all into consideration.
Pam, do you have anything else? Excuse me.
No, that ends the official public comment period, so I think we turn it back to you to close out your commission meeting.
Thank you. Ladies, do you have any comments you want to make? Thank you all for coming out. For a lot of people, this has been a long-term process. For some people, it's brand new, and you know, we're talking concepts and uses and those things. So a lot came out. I think it was wonderful to have so many opinions brought in. We have a week now. We have 8 days, and I think if you can, please come back to the next Wednesday meeting and bring some solutions. We would love to have paper. Write it down. I see no reason that we can't overlay your ideas on top of these so that we can actually apply the concepts and the guidelines and the criteria that we're using as a test to your idea. I don't see how 140-something parking spots would fit, but if it does, I would love to see it on a map and not as a concern, but as a solution. Because those types of things penciled out and brought to us, I think, and granted, it's 8 days, and I know how short a period that is in today's world. But if we had something that after next week's process that are valid ideas that we can go forth with, I think that's a big process and a big solution. Again, thank you, friends, for getting us to this point, and that the people were able to come and chime in on these ideas and what we heard tonight, and very valid concerns and very collaborative processes going on behind the scenes. It's wonderful to hear that going on, and there has been so much forethought prior to this. So a win in that was noted tonight, and I think that's a great opportunity going forward. Please do come back Wednesday and encourage other people. We have this time, and then this time is gone. You know, we're going to build a park. I think we're headed in that direction, and we don't want to not have said our piece. So thank you all for coming tonight. Mike.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. There was a question that I did not answer, and it was timeline. I said what's going to happen, but I didn't put times on it. We want to get this park done. You know, if we can come up with a solution here that goes to council and passes, Jonathan and I and the rest of the city staff are committed to getting this thing rolling and getting it through the process and breaking ground as soon as possible and getting this city making Dunphy Park the place that we all know it can be. I want to remind everybody to go to dunphypark.org. As of yesterday, it had 0 hits in the past whatever months. As of this evening, right before this meeting, it had over 75 hits. So I'm glad to hear that people are going to the website. This program will be the slideshow that Jacques did will be on there, and we will upload the meeting and the meeting notes as soon as they become available. There's a section there that you can type in your comments, and it goes to the Hotmail account, which was developed before this site was an official city site. You can always email me, mlangford@ci.sausalito.ca.us, and we'll include those comments and questions in our next meeting.
We have 8 seconds before our 8:30. Is that? Do we really nail it? That clock's not the same as that clock, but I'll adjourn this meeting and hope to see you all next Wednesday night. Thank you.